Welcome to MAC Bleu, the cutting-edge podcast for the nation's builders, merging the realms of construction with exciting advancements in technology. Join us on a thrilling journey where we delve into the dynamic world of blockchain, AI, the metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, and their transformative impact on the industry. Our engaging discussions span a wide spectrum, covering not only construction, economic development, supply chain, and market segments, but also exploring the vibrant tapestry of diversity within the construction landscape. We shed light on the intersection of local politics and its profound influence on the construction sector, while championing the remarkable contributions of women and minorities in construction. For all things MAC Bleu, head to www.macandblue.com, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky. Now let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MAC Bleu. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky, president and co-founder of Blue Wave. Today, I'm lucky enough to have Adam Stark on. Adam is founder, CEO, El Jefe of Jet.Build. And then on top of it, he runs his own podcast, Veterans Who Build. And I'm really excited to talk about that because that's near and dear to my heart. And welcome, Adam. Just really excited to have you on today.
Thanks so much for having me, JJ. I'm equally as excited.
I don't even know how we got introduced, and it doesn't matter. It's just like two misfits on the misfit island, but apparently we got... I think there was some past guests of yours that kind of introduced us and whatever. So it was kind of a befitting match. So two things. It's kind of cool. We can spend as much time as we want today on both your podcast and really talking about that, which I really want to help promote and get it cross-branded with a lot of our audience because I think it's a very befitting match. And then really dive into your background and what inspired you to do Jet.Build or Jet.Build or however you want to describe it, because there's always people in our space looking for those solutions. And so can't wait to hear the story of that. Before we get into it, you know how this works. I mean, you're usually on this side of the mic. Everyone wants to have like a personal connection with you, Adam. Can you kind of just take 5, 10, 15 minutes and just give kind of a background of why you're even in this space and how you got here? And then I'll interrupt and ask all sorts of questions if I feel it's pertinent, okay?
Oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. So, as you pointed out, it's always funny now to be on this side of the equation where I'm used to being the listener and the facilitator. So nice to switch places. So I actually grew up childhood in California, son of immigrants, and I guess mid-childhood, we moved to Israel, where I ended up living there for a little bit and serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. I served in a Special Operations Airborne Reconnaissance Unit, somewhat similar to a Ranger Battalion or Force Recon, kind of like a mix of the two, not the same military, so not necessarily one-to-one comparison. After that, did my undergrad in Boston, Northeastern. Shout out to any Northeastern listeners out there. Had a great experience. And was really always intrigued by the built environment in general. Growing up, I loved building things, being involved, whether that be Legos, whether that be, some, low-key things outside, like a ramp for snowboarding or something silly like that. I loved the tangible outcome, right? Creating something that you get to see, enjoy, be proud of, use. And when I finished my undergraduate degree, I basically just had an opportunity, fell in my plate just from networking, to join a vertically integrated developer in New York City. And that's really where I started my career in the space of built environment, where I spent about a decade on construction job sites, learning ins and outs, being that kind of point person between trades, GC, developer owner, lender, city. So I really got a nice, I'll call it unique experience of recognizing what each party needed in the process of developing. And, through that experience, about 2 months in, I'll call it, or 3 months, whatever, early on in the early days, it became very clear to me that, Excel and email chains was not a means of managing hundreds of millions of construction and development. It seemed very, very silly, seemed very, very unorganized, and with a military background, that's kind of a pet peeve, right? It really irks you, and that's when my business partner, childhood friend, who served together, also started his career in the built environment for developers as well. Both of us realized that there was a need for a solution that kind of in a modern methodology solves for this kind of command center, right, where all trades, all parties, all stakeholders can be involved in the process, collaborate, communicate, run through approvals and workflows, et cetera. And that's the inception of Jet.Build, and that started in 2017. And then more recently, we could dive into all of these things to whatever extent you'd like. Now, wrapping up the two sides that you highlighted, Jet.Build and then the Veterans Who Build show, my podcast. That's more recent, where I launched the show. And what got me, really intrigued by it is a few things. One is, I saw in my own experience the transition from the military to the built environment, and I recognized, especially in hindsight, I recognized how similar, to the extent that it can be, how similar of an experience that was, in the sense you get into, construction, all of a sudden you're in an environment that is, schedule driven, that has a lot of safety elements, that has a lot of collaboration with different teams, right? You have to collaborate, you have to communicate in order to get an end result, right? Project success. So, that rang a bell, right? A light in my brain. And then the second thing, I'm going to do a plug to the Sean Ryan Show, which is a very, well-known podcast. It's like a top 5 or whatever. I've been listening to that very, very heavily the past, year since I caught on to it. And I've been realizing through the stories of the veterans on the Sean Ryan Show, similarities to my own experience and the ability to kind of take what I've heard them speak about, those veterans speak about, and apply it to my own story and my own life, and really benefit from that. And that was that second piece of like aha moment to realize, well, why don't I connect these two things where I can showcase stories for veterans, which is something, personally passionate about. And I want to, bring that to light, normalize the concept of talking about service, talking about what you did, being proud of what you did in your service. So bridging, the ability to highlight veteran stories to realizing that the built environment is a great profession for veterans to join, to get involved with. And that was kind of the two pieces which, I plugged together and then launched the show off of.
Great introduction. Thank you, Adam. You had my mind spinning, so I'll try to do my best to take you down the different rabbit holes. Hey, for the audience's sake, and if you can't talk about any of this, just say it, but it really intrigued me when you talked about, and forgive me, because when you said the veteran, I just figured, American forces. I mean, to think that were you actually a dual citizen then? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, correct. Dual citizen, yeah.
So was it actually like Israeli compulsory military, or was you more like the Mossad type mystique that everyone knows about?
Yeah, so, it was compulsory if, you're living there and you're a citizen. So, naturally it becomes so. I could have, in theory, moved out of the country, given I have American citizenship as well. So it depends on how you want to look at that. But, I perceive it as mandatory. Yeah.
Okay. And then what was this? By second? Oh, so but it was still strictly military. It wasn't like the Mossad or CIA or anything like that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, my service was strictly military, but like a lot of special operations units, whether it be U.S. or any other countries, a lot of times you are working together with agencies. Yeah.
And then, so how many years were you in or how many years was that total that you were involved in that capacity?
So on active duty it was 4 years, and then there's pretty significant continuation of reserve duty. It's a little bit of a different structure given the mandatory nature of the military there, where it's more heavily relied on the combination of the two, right? Mandatory plus reserve duty.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so now let's go back to Jet.Build. So the impetus for starting it, okay, so you kind of told us the story about you and you said you had the partner that kind of, you got frustrated like everybody else. And instead of buying something off the shelf, you were like, hey, let's build this for ourselves. I think the audience, because almost everyone's has had some sort of software experience, some sort of platform experience, usually the ones that are chiming into this show. I think everyone will want to know, okay, Adam, how is yours different? What kind of chassis did you look at? What was that baseline of why? Again, why didn't you just take something off the shelf, make it better, or go seek them out and ask them, like, why start something new when potentially the market's already saturated? And I'm just doing my job as a host to poke holes in your in your questioning and theory here.
Yeah, please do. So, the inception, like the reason why Jet even, started to begin with, was because we looked at the products that existed in the market, which are, the legacy, well-known, established brands. Everyone knows who I'm talking about.
You can say them; it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So we looked at Procore, we looked at Autodesk, we looked at Trimble. So we like to call those legacy. I mean, public companies, massive. Been around for a while, kind of led industry to realizing the necessity for a management tool. So they did an awesome job in doing that. Nonetheless, when we proposed these companies to, meaning my business partner and I, proposed these companies to the companies we worked for, which again, 2 different companies, we both had the same response, which was, I'm not paying for this, right? Price point, get out of here. And second was just difficulty in understanding it. It wasn't the right solution for the companies we were working for, probably because they weren't building, massive, they didn't have massive construction teams. They weren't building massive construction sites. So the level of, optionality, I'll call it, I'll say optionality, it just wasn't relevant, right? So kind of the product wasn't the right fit. And then also, especially the price point wasn't approvable, for lack of a better term there. So that's when.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
My business partner and I started to co-jet ourselves. So that said, a differentiator that we like to give, to provide, which is really evident when you just look at our product, is, we were building it while we were on job sites, understanding what was needed to collaborate, with the different parties involved. We understood what solutions existed from the legacy products that existed. So we kind of took what we thought was working best on those products, implemented it on a modern tech stack, and continued building over a few years. Joseph, my business partner, also is a civil engineer by trade. So we have lots of understanding, whether that be, managerial or.
So he's a recovering engineer. That's what we always call the civil guys. Tell him, exactly. I can't wait till he watch. I can't wait till he watches this. He'll be like, yeah, I relate to that statement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you will. So, I like to say we built the product with a pretty deep understanding of, what happens on job sites, which allowed us to create an end result that is simplicity in mind, right? You have all of the robust commercial grade solutions that you need to build anything. However, on a very intuitive user interface, user experience. So really a big differentiator is, the fact that you could take a look at Jet. If you've been building in your career, meaning, if you've just stepped on a job site for the first time in your life, you might need, some additional hand-holding to understand Jet. But if you've been in industry for a little bit, understand how project processes work, you won't really need much more than a 40-minute tutorial of, what's what on our product before you'll just have a full understanding of it. So the simplicity and intuitive nature is a big selling point for us. Beyond that, our ability to implement. So, going back to that core of our product, our understanding coming from industry allows us to gauge from our clients and our users what's working well, what isn't, what can we shift, what do they need that we don't have. And we're always engaging in that feedback loop and always implementing accordingly in a really rapid pace. So those are big differentiators. And then our pricing model, comparatively to legacy products, it's a lot more convenient, I'll call it, for our clients. So those are the elements in which we differentiate ourselves.
What and by the way, great summary. Let me poke holes and try to ask some questions, trying to think like the audience would. So okay, Adam. So if I go to any of the legacy products and I look at the dashboard, is yours the same? Is it more robust? Is it more refined? You're saying that you're much more intuitive. So I get into. I guess I always ask the tough questions of utilization, right? Because I'll go back 25, 30 years. I'll never forget when I first got introduced to P3. You're probably too young to even remember what Primavera was for scheduling. But I remember if anybody that worked for the large companies, it was forced down our throat, hey, use P3. But yet when you looked at the utilization rate in any of these companies for the ridiculous subscription rates that you were paying, you were lucky if anyone was using 5 or 10% of that from a utilization standpoint. So how can you answer that question regarding Jet versus those legacy products?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'm not going to pretend like implementation is easy or using a new system is easy. There's always going to be some form of Band-Aid rip, right? So I'm going to acknowledge that and put that out there. I don't pretend like you just...
No, and I'm glad you stated that, but keep going.
Yeah. So putting that aside, once you have a comfort level of Jet, and again, I mean, we're literally seeing, an hour of onboarding plus minus. I mean, really our average is 45 minutes, but just call it an hour. And, clients are up and running. Then we'll touch base on a biweekly, scenario, or if a client just reaches out, of course we then answer. It's to say, okay, what else can we help you start to leverage? How else can we help you onboard your stakeholders, right? So depending on who the client is, whether it be the developer, whether it be the GC, we'll assist in onboarding the external parties, right? So if you're the GC, for example, that could mean your trades, it could mean the owner, and we'll onboard those teams with the permissions that are relevant to them. So the way that we're finding success is, I like this example because it's just really simple, is let's say you have an expediter. So you give them access to permit management. They log in, literally all they're going to see on their dashboard is permit management and maybe drawings, right? Permit management and drawings. Now it's really hard to, especially if you're in that trade or in the industry, it's really hard to now get confused as to, how do I add a permit? How do I respond to this permit expiring? How do I answer a question? How do I assign a workflow to, upload the permit itself? I mean, it's really simple once you, minimize it to that extent. So that's really how we're addressing the question that you just said. And beyond that, we're not doing cost plus, right? So we're giving it an all-inclusive product. So that's to say, all right, you don't want to use permits. You don't want to use our scheduling tool. That's fine. You're not paying an exorbitant fee for this module. Rather, you can pick and choose what solutions within the modules work for you.
Fair enough. So 7 years in business already, what have you done any pivots or iterations to either the platform or what's coming out of the backside? I assume you can talk about some maturation that took place with you and your partner and maybe whoever else you have coding this thing and doing the administration of it. Can you tell some stories about how you guys have morphed in that respect, Adam?
Yeah, it's been a really exciting process seeing how we've grown to where we are today. So, in the initial phases, I'll call it, 2017, that's when we literally started to code the product. Around 2021 plus minus is when, the product was really operational with clients, past beta phase, all that beginning elements. So really, since 2021, more or less, we've been fully up and running. So I'll create that separation 2021 to now versus the time before that. So in that phase, what we've really been able to do is learn what has been working well on these alternative, products that have been around for much longer than us, and how do we improve those process flows, right? So whether that be a workflow structure, whether that be the ability to edit existing information, whether that be adding a new solution that literally didn't exist or doesn't exist on an alternative product, reporting. So it's all these, bringing up kind of specific examples to note our relationship with our clients, where we really dig as much as the client is willing to, allow us to their benefit. to pull out, how can we serve them better? How can we be better for their team and their projects? And that's been a really cool experience to see how we could continue to differentiate. So I think, in a few, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, I would presume, we'll really be able to show solutions that are true differentiators rather than saying, choose an iPhone or an Android, right? I mean, similar, it's just a preference thing. I'll say we'll always beat anyone on price. But those things aside, I think very soon we're going to start getting into the realm of, well, here are differentiators that we're actually literally providing that these legacy products don't have.
So are you initiating those changes and developments from your own purview? In other words, are you seeing the struggles of your client, or are they calling you going, Adam, I want you to fix this? Or is it kind of a 50-50, or, give the context of what's driving the change in the maturation?
Yeah. So how it works, typically how we've seen it work is in the earlier stages, it'll be, whether it be, depending on the account, it'll be someone on our team, potentially me, interacting with a client on, like I mentioned before, weekly, bi-weekly, and then kind of phase out as they get more comfortable with the product and we've onboarded their external teams. Once they understand that we're here and we're wanting and willing to hear their feedback and actually implement it, it turns into them simply reaching out, which is obviously preferred because they'll just tell us when something is, not great or missing. We'll accept that feedback, whether it be on a call, whether it be asked for an example, like an example report or screenshots, whatever it may be. It'll be client driven, after the early stages of onboarding, essentially, and getting them ramped up.
What, again, I'm just trying to ask questions through the customer's eyes. What, for those that aren't familiar with your product and your brand, what would you say the demographic is of like your core constituent or client? Are you finding like a revenue size, a vertical, I don't, you know where I'm trying to go with this, or because I think people want to have a relationship. They're like, oh, I'm interested in Jet, but all right, Adam, who are your clients? Not specific names, but what does that DNA look like?
Yeah. So I love this question because I always laugh when I think about it. It's really interesting in our industry. I'm going to say this like medium-sized builder. And what's interesting about saying medium-sized builder is you can have outfits that are, I don't know, like 20 to 50 people internally that are doing $1 billion plus, yearly, right, of new development, right, or new construction work. So it's a really interesting range of demographic where, basically once scale starts to occur, then you'll see the value of Jet and on your operation. We see a lot of success on the multifamily industry and hotels. In industrial, we have a few examples, but it depends on the use case. So, people that are building, just boxes, then, fair enough. You don't necessarily need such a robust product because you could just be, used to building your walls and your floor and then some basic, tenant work. So really anything that has complexity, like I mentioned, right? If it's a hotel, multifamily, some commercial spaces as well. But hotel and multifamily are kind of where data centers are kind of like where we're seeing the most volume, which is tracking, I think, with industry trend as well.
What about from you made me think of this too. What about from a delivery method standpoint? Like, are you finding that your client base is more private, more public, maybe a little bit of both, as far as how that project delivery method is both done and procured? I mean, when you think about what kind of contracts are they holding? Can you answer that one?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so for sure, so far we've seen the most growth in the private sector. I've come across on the public side, I've come across a few friction points. One being, if it is a public company, the necessity to run a lot of decision making through whatever channels that exist, which just automatically causes friction. So it's unfortunate, but whatever, it is what it is. So yeah, private sector, easier to make a decision, quicker to make a decision, quicker to see impact internally. That's where we're seeing a lot of, just volume, generally speaking. That said, we're really intrigued by the government sector. I think that's a really untapped market, and that's potentially something that we'll look toward in terms of getting involved with in the coming year or so.
Okay, and actually, that was the crux of my question to you, was that when I said the private public, I should have done a better job. I meant the end user, and so I was thinking of the companies that typically are working with, maybe they have a JOC with a certain municipality, those kind of things, where then they're, because I've seen with the development of software and SaaS-based businesses, and let's be honest, not to be anti-government here, but they're slower than molasses in January compared to us in the private sector. So, fine, if you go to them with one of the legacy products, they'll be like, oh yeah, we're familiar with that. They come with Jet and they're like, oh, who's this new guy in the block? Well, where's our level of interpretation? Oh, we're going to put up the roadblock because we don't want to deal with another software. You see where I'm going with this, Adam. Yeah. So you answered it correctly, whether you know it or not. I just wanted to ask that tough question, which then leads into the next one. Is a lot of people are going to go, all right, Adam, you got a great product, but what about your open platforms with accounting and all the like every other company? The statistics are deafening when you think that most companies have over 20 softwares that they're trying to integrate. And so they always want to have some sort of open access, and so can you speak to how you're integrating in those companies and those platforms?
Yeah, this is a great question and a great topic.
We'll take as much time as you want to talk about it then.
Okay. Sure. So, I want to highlight first and foremost, all of our APIs are literally open source on our website. So, go on our website, you can find and see. And so we try to be as open and as flexible as possible with APIs, integrations, whatever clients need. We've seen what's, interesting and probably not surprising. We find very successful, simple, easy, quick success with other newer technology platforms. Their ability to be as flexible as we are. Integrations happen seamlessly, quickly, and everyone moves on. The struggle ends up coming around, as you pointed out, accounting systems, which tend to be, dated technology or built off of dated technology. Those companies also tend to literally intentionally create friction, which, this whole thing drives me crazy. I could go on a whole rant about that.
Go. This is your platform. You don't have to be politically correct now because you're not on your own show, so you can say whatever the hell you want.
Right. So, I find this to be, pretty objective when, you have companies out there. There's a few that, come up the most that first and foremost create a one-time upfront fee and then an annual recurring fee just for the integration. The fees are not cheap whatsoever. They're extensive. It makes you question the integration itself. And then they also put onus on their client as well, which is the most shocking out of all of this, meaning not only are they charging, right, which obviously somebody's going to eat that, not them. So it's either the client or, us as the additional service provider or both, but they also require time and effort from the client to support in creating that integration. So, these companies are doing their best to prevent integrations. And the only thing that I can think of as to why is they don't want to allow for the adoption of newer technologies that are probably, thought through better because they had, second mover advantage in that regard, probably less expensive, probably more integratable with other products. So I can only think or translate this as their means of trying to hold on and handcuff data to retain their clients. I don't know other than that. What I have found and what we've started to dig into as of more recently is there are a lot of third-party integrators. So companies that are specifically out there to create integrations. Now I'm in the process of digging into this, so I don't have like a full-on answer to provide yet. However, the hope is that these companies can take a lot of that weight at a reasonable fee, right, and provide the integration that's needed. Now, to your point, right, and calling out the necessity for integrations because of the multitude of platforms that exist, it's certainly a problem. It's not easy. What you see a lot of times with marketplace type integration options that a lot of the or some of the legacy products have. Is a generic integration might not do anything you want it to do, right? It's just a generic integration. So it might cover your needs, it might not cover your needs, it might cover some of your needs. So unless it covers all of what you need, it tends to just cause more friction. And you're better off just, leaving the product separate. Maintenance, I'm not sure if people are aware of this or not, but maintenance needs to happen on those endpoints, right? So if you're updating your product, you have to then also update those endpoints so that everything is continually reading, properly and to date, right, into the updated manner of the product and of the integration and both products. So there's a lot that goes into integrations in general. And I don't have a great answer other than we do custom integrations. Our APIs are all open. We tend to have a lot of success with newer products for the reasons I mentioned. And this is a concern that I think is growing, and that's also why you're going to see a lot of these niche solutions that are specific to integrations will exist. One that the audience may be familiar with is Zapier, which is known for, just like generally speaking, not necessarily in relation to the built environment, just generally speaking, an integration platform. So things like that are going to start happening specific for construction.
Great explanation. And I'm glad you went down that rabbit hole because, the forums that I sit in or the discussions that I have, that's easily 95% of the frustration of CEOs, CFOs, anyone in the C-suite. They're like, here's what we spent. Here's our CapEx or our recurring expenses. What do I have to show for it in return? And I would encourage you in your whole vertical sector, the people that can provide this solution and monetize it will be better off, because I think the marketplace is ready for it. They're willing to stand up to the gorillas in the room and the curmudgeons that are trapped in 1985 and go, yeah, you know what? Speed and change are constant. So either get on board or get off board. And so I can't encourage you enough to find that lane and expand on it, because like I said, I talk to more people that are wanting that than not wanting it.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, it's from the same source. Their employees are asking for it. It's not even the clients. It's when you look at your vertical integration, it's the employees that are executing on this. And you know what I mean, Adam? It's the superintendents, the project managers, the project coordinators, all those typical titles that are in any organization. I don't care if it's vertical or horizontal. They're the ones that have to perform at this level. And they're the ones that get so frustrated. Or look at any accounting staff. They want to know the integration from what these people are building, quote unquote. And yet, like you said, they're stymied and trapped by, hey, we're dealing with this paradigm over here that can't be broken or altered. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because we can spend an hour and probably get 10 other guests on this topic. But our job is, let's open the box, let's get people talking about it, and then hopefully it leads to further discussion. Is there anything you want to add to that?
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
I mean, well said. I really appreciate your summary and recognition of the battle that exists there. I think what's going to happen sooner than later is you have a generation that's moving into decision making positions that grew up with the smartphone, right? So those that grew up with the smartphone recognize a handful of things. One is technology is evolving. It has evolved and it continues to evolve. in that evolution, they've seen the improvements of technology and the decrease in cost. So they're going to, at some point, see the cost they're paying for these, legacy ERP models and immediately question it, because, I mean, it's crazy not to question. It's really cost prohibitive to innovation, because you'll have one solution that's taking all of and then some of your technology budget, and therefore handcuffing your ability to innovate, right? So once you start looking at what else exists in the market, what are newer technologies that exist, you'll see efficiencies on the, operation side, you'll see improvements on the budget side, and then you'll also see the potential for simpler integrations like we've been talking about. So, I think it's inevitable. It's just a matter of, you want to rip the Band-Aid now or you want to rip the Band-Aid later. That's it.
Yeah, it's just going to take someone to bust through the glass ceiling, that's about a big player, a big project, or there'll be some catalyst that'll move the needle. Speaking of which, on that, what's your thoughts on, as far as the generative AI being implemented? And then I have a second question. So just compartmentalize that and then go to you brought up the ERP. One of the things I've been contemplating is, are the quintessential ERP systems, are they already done? In other words, with technology and with AI and with the things that you kind of gave the framework to, are we looking at the end of ERPs in the very near future?
I mean, it's a great question. I think it depends on how you define near future. I think inevitably, yes, that's for sure. In terms of I'll answer the AI question, and then it'll kind of also answer this ERP question. I think a few things. First and foremost, what we have to recognize is that in order for AI to really support your niche of role, your niche of industry, your niche of vertical, whatever, you need to amass data, right? I mean, what is ChatGPT doing? It's amassing data, and that's why you're getting the evolution of, 3.0, 4.0, et cetera. Well, that's not necessarily helpful for you specifically in your, trade, in the built environment where information is very siloed. It's not on Google, right? So how do you enable AI for what you're doing? Well, you need to start with a system, which is, that's going to centralize information, index that data, and then therefore eventually, depending on the pace in which you provided data, so like how many projects over how much, time, once it amasses that pool of information, of data, it'll then be able to provide you with, insights that will be very helpful, or automations that will be very helpful. So the way that we perceive it is, let's tackle the easy, simple things first that are immediately, realized. For example, automations on admin stuff, right? So like I mentioned before, that permit management solution. Like, all right, so let's start automating, whether it be reminders, whether it be, submissions of permits, same thing for insurance, right? Just simple tasks, or just reminders, generally speaking, when you create workflows, automate those workflows, right? Automate reports that's pulling from the data that's being implemented, which has to happen somewhere, somehow. So, the way we look at it is, first and foremost, let's eliminate this, a low-hanging fruit per se of admin tasks that so many of us in the industry are still doing. It doesn't need to, it just doesn't need to happen. You don't need to spend so much time creating a forecasting report, so much time creating a workforce report, a log for your submittals, et cetera. Automate that. So that's first of all. Now, once you start, elevating yourself and ability to, bandwidth and ability to think and make decisions that might be more proactive, now that you're not wasting time with admin tasks, AI will start to pick up and push your ability forward because you've amassed data, because you have a, higher level per se of thought process. That said, other elements that we're doing, which are effectively OCR readers, I don't really consider that as AI, but people like to bunch it together. That's things like scheduling overlays, specification and submittal overlays, which then could provide, machine learning, AI type insights, drawing overlays, right? So again, it's like stepping stones, right? Rather than thinking or seeing like robots that are getting built by, I think it's like Boston Dynamics are doing some really cool stuff. Yeah, I appreciate them pushing the needle, and I think it's inevitable. I don't know how soon that will actually happen. We're focused on, the low-hanging fruit. There are a lot of things you can tackle literally immediately that will relieve your bandwidth and allow you to start, working smarter.
Yeah. I think a great example, I'm sure you can back me up on this one. A great example is just what I call the arbitrage game, right? So let's take it. You kind of went down this a little bit. Let's say you have a spec, a drawing, and then with technology now, a superintendent can walk into that room, literally scan it, think of like a LiDAR type thing, and put all that into the system, and it will be able to sit there and say, hey, you forgot the flugel binder, the whatchamacallit's in the wrong spot, and the, whatever, I'm trying to make up another name, the flux capacitor is upside down. Okay, boom. Okay, so there's an example where AI and, again, what do I call it? A non-proprietary database that can easily, look at how much money and time that just saved for everyone, both the contractor, the subcontractor, the trades, the suppliers, but primarily the end user. And then think about it. Now they also have a correct as-built. They have a digital footprint of what's going on. I mean, I could go on and on. It's just Pandora's box. But like you said, that's an easy one. That's low-lying fruit that a lot of companies are already doing. But then, like you said, now where do we progress? And then where do we progress? And then, okay, fine. Then we're collaborating with Boston Scientific on drywall robots or whatever. I mean, I'm sure you, just like me, we get exposed to all these great technologies, but at the end of the day, it still has to, there has to be a return on investment, and people still have to make money. So,
with those, first of all, amazing word usage there. That was great. That aside, the flux capacitor, I can't remember the other two, but those were great.
We'll call it the flugel binder.
The flugel binder, yes.
You're probably not even old enough. You're probably not even old enough to remember that one. That was in the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise, where it was I think he was talking about the thing that's on the end of your shoelace. I think it's the flugel binder.
Nice.
Hey, I was looking at the clock. I want to be respectful because I also want to highlight two of your other things, being an author in the wellness capacity. I think that's interesting, and the podcast. But I don't want to cut you off. What other message or call to action would you like out of our audience as far as Jet.Build? Or, it's kind of your commercial pitch here.
Yeah, totally. I would suggest it's always worth the conversation, right? I mean, if it's not a fit, that's totally fine. If it's exposure to what exists, that's great. If it's a fit, that's amazing, right? It's amazing all around. So I think you got to just be more willing to expose yourself to newer technology, see how that could fit in your process, whether it be today, tomorrow, in a year, and whatever. It's a matter of aligning yourself with the future. And that really has to start today, right? Well, we mentioned with AI and data, you got to just get exposed to it and see, if it's relevant for you. If not, then at least you potentially had a learning scenario of how you could, manage your teams more efficiently one way or the other. So that's all I got to say. Just be willing to have conversations with new technologies in the space.
And the domain is Jet.Build, right?
Correct.
So Jet.Build.com or whatever it is. But yeah, if anyone's listening, don't be afraid to look up at them and spy on them, reach out to them, engage with them, have them look under your own hood, all those kind of things. Hey, before we go back to the podcast and the veterans, take 5 or 10 minutes and share with the audience about what you were passionate about with being an author, the wellness program, and what inspired you to do all that.
Yeah, so I found myself between finishing my enlistment and when I released my book, I just found myself trying to explore means and methods, practices of wellness as a whole. And a few friends of mine saw what I was doing, saw my commitment toward it, and really encouraged me to write about it. That turned out to being a very nostalgic and meditative practice is writing and journaling, generally speaking. So recommend that. The book is about the 3 pillars that I practice, which is mental health, mental wellness, nutrition, and physical fitness. And what it's about is the recognition of, I'll call it fluidity, meaning there's no, singular path. There's no situation that's, exactly the same day to day. And that's interpreted in each of those three pillars. And it's a matter of really, at large, it's a matter of finding how you can create repetition and consistency for yourself, right? So it's exposing yourself to different means and methods, understanding what you like, and that could change day to day too, right? Understanding what you like, and then understanding how you could commit to something in each of those pillars, right? And create your baseline, create your habit, your routine, and then basically just watch yourself start to enjoy the journey, start to reap the benefits of wellness in a holistic manner. So that's what it's about. The book itself, I wrote about these two journeys that I took, cycling journeys. So it was first two times that I've cycled, and I just talked about kind of my headspace, like reflections through those journeys and how I kind of applied my methodology to that. And then the middle of the book, the core of it is going to be kind of those three pillars that I talked about. So that's my book, and that's my kind of wellness philosophy on a macro level.
What's the name of it, Adam?
The book is called SHALOSH, which is 3 in Hebrew. It's literal translation, the number 3, and that stands for the 3 pillars.
Oh, nice. And it's available for the audience, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Good. Well, thanks for the self-plug there. Hopefully we increase those sales a little bit.
Sure.
So now back to the podcast. How long ago did you start the podcast?
Yeah, so I just actually today released episode 8. In terms of how long ago, it's hard, probably 6 months ago or so. It's hard for me to pinpoint it. But yeah, it's been a really amazing journey so far. A lot of just amazing feedback, excitement around joining episodes from veterans in terms of joining episodes. Really excited to just continue pushing it forward.
Well, if a schmuck like me can do 100 and however many episodes, I guarantee you're well on your way if you're into 8. So continue it. Okay, so veteran base connects to the build environment. Get that. Mm-hmm. What was it your idea? Let's go to the first few episodes. Because I happened to look it up before we did this interview, and I was like pretty blown away. You've got some really good people on there. Mm-hmm. What has been the common theme as far as the connectivity to who you're finding, or are they finding you, or like what are the themes that keeps attracting that veteran connectivity to our world, if you want to call it that, Adam?
Yeah, it's really interesting to continue hearing veterans' journeys into the built environment. The theme that I continue to see, and it's always just as cool each time hearing it and going through that their life experience getting to the built environment, is a lot of those characteristics I mentioned in the beginning, which in hindsight were my own story, is getting into this space in general. You see the necessity to collaborate with a lot of different people, doing a lot of different trades, yet, the collaboration is a necessity in order to, get to your end result, get to your end goal, whether that's, developing a building, whether that's developing a product to support the building. So that's been one unique element, is that necessity for collaboration and communication. The second is for those that are, specifically in the trades that are job sites. That one's even easier to see the connectivity, which is, you show up, you have objectives for the day, you work hard, you have a team-like environment on your job site. So that's been really cool to kind of, hash out and everyone's unique journey experience, nonetheless have that similar, result.
What about what in the 8 episodes that you've done, what's been the eye openers as far as the, I guess I'm looking more for the veteran side, and I'm not looking to,
sure,
I'm not trying to peel a scab here, but from my limited experience, it's always been like, I'll just throw this out there just to see if it sparks a conversation. The underdiagnosis of mental health, for instance, of transitioning from, military background to civilian life. And I realize that you're concentrating on the build environment, but I can't imagine that still doesn't come up in conversation in some capacity.
Oh yeah. So thank you for highlighting that. I'll just do a quick run through of the flow of the show itself. So we start, it's really chronological order, and it's kind of life story of each veteran that comes on. So we do, childhood, we go through enlistment, we go through, we go through joining the military, then we go through enlistment itself, then we talk about that transition period. And I try to kind of create as much conversation around that as possible, to the point that you just brought up. And really one of the core intentions of the show is to bring that to light, bring the normalcy around talking about that transition period, which is really difficult, which, is because of PTSD, it's because of trauma, it's because of shifting extremities, right? Meaning you're coming from military and you're going into civilian. So those are two opposites. I think the eye openers that have happened so far in the show is hearing stories of veterans, whether it be from childhood through enlistment, hearing about hardships that people have gone through and that are just continuing to move forward in life and not allow themselves to fall into a victim mentality for themselves. That's been the coolest thing that I've been able to just be exposed to hear, and then, thankfully be able to promote that then and their stories, right, on the show via the platform. So, just whether it be childhood of, not great, parents or parents not around, to being homeless, to, figuring out how to get, just enlist, right, to save themselves from their childhood exposures, to, getting through a military service, getting through tough deployments, finishing enlistments and not knowing where or what to do, still having, hardships with family, no kind of backbone to lean on. And then nonetheless, still have a growing career that, they're still pushing forward. So just incredible stories. I mean, I just feel honored to facilitate the stories.
What's your goal, Adam, right now as far as frequency of the podcast? Do you have a goal in mind, or is it more happenstance right now because you're just building up the brand right now?
Oh yeah. So I'm every other week. So every other Monday we release. That was also why it was hard for me to say exactly how long ago I started, because before I released an episode, I took a lot of interviews so that I would have like a pool of content to release. So I pretty much average at least one new interview every other week, like internally, so that I can stay on that cycle of releasing an episode every other week. Nice.
So let me spin this, and you've said a lot of things, and I was trying to be a good listener and tried to think of a lot of other things that we've done here on this show, which is we talk about education, the trades, the military. You have a very unique position in me interviewing you today. You're, it's kind of cool. You're immigrant. You did living in two countries. You did the service. You're formally educated. You got an MBA from, NYU. You did the what do I call it? You're both a Boston guy and a New York guy. I'm sure you're really popular in your neighborhood. When you wear the Boston Red Sox socks and the Yankees shirt, I'm sure you're ostracized in 2 seconds. Anyway, where I was going with all this is, we've had a lot of guests on talk about the formality of college, and that going into the trades, going to the military, they are viable options. Speed, change, everything's different than like when I went to college and things like that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you have covered all those. You've been in the trades, you've formal education plus the military. What advice can you give young people right now into any of those verticals?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think about this quite a bit now. Just in hindsight of my own experience so far, I think there is tremendous value in going straight to trades, meaning go become an electrician, go become a plumber. You can always grow from there. I think it's an unbelievable experience to gain that technical understanding early on, and then decide if you want to pivot versus your traditional undergraduate college education. Also, I would suggest that if you do go the route of the traditional college education, realize that you really do have the ability to take on more. So, I remember I finished my service. I start, undergrad university at Northeastern. And, I couldn't understand, why school took as long as it did. There was an incredible amount of free time. Like you could bunch your classes to one, front load it. Then you have every holiday imaginable off. You have summer off. You have, it's crazy. So what I ended up doing was I got a job, right? And I had
novel approach, Adam. You were the 2%.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, right. So you asked the question, so I had to throw it down. Is you really could do both, right? I mean, you could find a job, start to learn what you like, what you don't like, and then weave that, into your education. Or, like I mentioned in the beginning, just go try a trade. I mean, it's so, what's the word I want to use? So
the barrier to entry is nothing. It's
right.
Especially with the supply and demand that's going on right now. Anyone will invest in you if you just want to show up.
Right. Correct. And it's a very fulfilling job, right? I mean, you're doing, work that you get to literally see the result of your work. And, there's not many other trades, positions, jobs, whatever, that you can say that about. So I think that's a really unique dynamic that, should get pitched a little bit more. I think the recognition that technology is going to continue growing in the space. So it's not going to be this dated, industry, right? I think it needs a little bit more marketing refresh as a whole. And I think that's happening. So that'll be a nice push for the trades in general. And yeah, I mean, I think that's my opinion on it. For a secondary degree, I think, get some work experience in and then see what secondary degree, speaks to you. Then you'll also gain more value out of it because you have, real life experience to apply against it. That's me, speaking to the MBA.
What about the military aspect then, Adam? What's your feelings on that?
I mean, I'm not someone who thinks encouraging that makes sense. I think that, you yourself need to want to serve, right? Need to want to give back to, your community in some capacity. I think if you are able to take the positives away from your service or take the principles away from your service and apply it to where you're at any stage of life, it's invaluable. It's incredible value. It's a set of, what's the word I want to use? It's principles that, really apply to everything and are just truly valuable. I mean, that's a part of the show as well, my podcast, the Veterans Who Build Show, where we talk about translatable skills, military to profession. And there's just so many. That's another, the secondary answer to your question there is that's another piece that I love hearing the different perspectives in terms of how skills translate into your professional life. So, military has so much value. So I definitely, if you're interested in the military, I'll encourage that. I don't believe in convincing someone of doing it, though.
I think that's well framed and well stated. So with that, my friend, I think we're going to wrap it up. I just want to do a plug for you for the people that are watching and listening. So again, Adam Stark, Jet.Build. He's also got the Veterans Who Build show. So we'll encourage everyone to get on that, and then look up Adam he's very findable. Google has him, earmarked. NSA's probably got a chip in his head. So interested in his book or hopefully books as an experienced author. Just can't say enough about Adam, you coming on, sharing your experiences, your insight. And I wish you the best in exploring all of these things and continuing to move the needle in our space. So thanks for joining us today, okay?
Thanks so much, AJ. I really appreciate you having me on the show and allowing me to share my story on your platform.
You've been listening to the MAC Bleu Show, brought to you by Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the MAC Bleu podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow JJ Levensky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in every Monday